for showing up today on this call, trying something new. When we're going to discuss, our small businesses and what to do in this environment, the stimulus bill, and then if you have other things that are going to pop up with questions, please email me during this talk, and then we'll try to address those at the end. So just let's try to learn, and let's try to take a little pause and think about where we really want to go, because there's been just way too much quick jumping to conclusions. Oh, we got to apply for this, got to apply for that, and it may not be necessarily what you need. I am going to keep the mute button on just so that there's no distractions, so you can just hear what I'm saying. And then, like I said, email me with any questions, and then we'll address them at the end. If I think it's specific to you that and it doesn't apply to the group, then we'll address those separately. The current environment is really just, it's not like anything we've seen. It's probably a little bit like 9/11, a little bit like the recession of 2008, but probably goes back to more like the World War II. And so there's just a lot of things going on. There's widespread panic, and we're quarantined at home. We have whole industries that are pretty well shut down, or at least severely damaged. And we feel like we're at war with this COVID-19. Into this, the government passes a massive stimulus bill that has some pork in it for people in different places, and there's a lot more money in there than actually the government can afford. But they had to do something, so I get that, because we saw people panic over toilet paper. Now small businesses are in panic over these loan programs, and we just got to find the right path forward. It's just too easy for this to become a great big money grab, and people are making all sorts of emotional decisions as opposed to the logical decision of what's right for them. So before we get started on what to do, and there is a lot to do, because all of our businesses are going to need different things. Some of them need cash, some need a better business plan, some need a combination of all of that. I want to read a quote by Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor survived being in a for those of you who aren't familiar, he survived being in a concentration camp during World War II. And he wrote that Man's Search for Meaning as a result of that. And it's a phenomenal book. And basically, he figured out who survives and who doesn't. Some of these just absolutely terrible situations, like a concentration camp, and like some of what we're going through now. And anyway, if you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. You have more free time on your hands now. But one of his quotes, and I really like this, he says, between stimulus and response, and it's kind of interesting, stimulus is in here, but he goes, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And, too many people are just reacting. And we have to start acting wisely here, because we're going to be shaping the course of our lives, our businesses, and just a lot of different things for the future. And so we got to figure out what is the right path for you. So before we rush into these new loans, I want you to think about something, because this is a time to reset your business. Each of you has different challenges. There's people on this call that are doing phenomenally well right now because they're in certain situations where they're still very, very busy. Others on this call, their businesses have been essentially shut down. And then everywhere in between. And then there's a lot of uncertainty. And some people, the impact is right now. And some people, the impact's going to be 6 months or a year from now. That's the part where the way this is unfolding, every one of us has different choices. So I'd like for you to consider 6 questions. The first question is, what is my business going to look like for the next 2 months? And, we have some short-term issues that we have to figure out, no question. So what are those, what's it just going to look like? And is it impacted? If not, or is it moderately impacted? Just what is this going to play out? Then we have to look at, what is our business going to look like for the next 3 years? And I'm saying 3, it could be 2, and it could be 5. But the point is, what is it after we get past this 2 months? What's it really going to be? And, you get somebody like a hotel or the airline industry. I don't know what, if people are going to go to the major league ballparks for, baseball games. This is a crazy position. And each of our businesses has to address this. We have to get the best information possible. Then we have to look hard at our current financial position. What do you have? And, this is both a combination of personal and business. What's our personal, our retirement accounts look like? What is all of this? And they all taken a hit for the most part, but we still have some options. Then we need to think about, what do we need to do to get through the next 2 months? And I'm just picking 2 months at random. I don't know how long we're going to be shut down, but I'm thinking the stay-at-home's at least end April, and I'm really thinking it's end of May. So, and then it's going to be sort of iffy depending on where you're at in the country. So we need to get through these 2 months. Then it's a matter of, okay, what do we need to do to get through the next 3 years? How big a financial hit are we going to take over the next 2 months? And I know there's these loading programs and all this, but we'll get into those. But we need to think about this without any of that, because we need to make sure we understand our current reality. And then, are there any changes that I need to implement in my business? Partially for the next 2 months, but partially, what is changes going to be for the going forward? Do I want to do things differently? The fact that we're doing this Zoom call right now, I'm contemplating doing these more often if clients like them, because I think it's something that can provide more immediacy to our discussions, to ideas. And so all of a sudden, I may change how I'm doing things. And I think each of us is having the same issue. So I want you to just think about the future for a minute, because this is where, this is our time to write our future. I mean, we took a big hit, and we can't control some of the things out there with the coronavirus and all that, and the shutdown. We can't control that. But now we can control how we react to it. Okay, so this is something over the next 1, 2, 4, 6 weeks we need to really address hard. Because right now, the shiny object is the free government money. Everybody's saying, oh, we got, this free government money, and we need to apply for it. And that's, I mean, it's great that it's out there, and we definitely do need to apply for some of it. The problem is, it may not solve your problems. And we're going to get into the couple of the major loan programs, but the Payback Protection Program, I think is going to be so oversubscribed that most people that apply are going to get some fraction of what they need. Even the ones that it was specifically designed for are only going to get fractions. So I think that's not going to necessarily fix our problems. That's why we got to use a combination of things. So that's where I want it. We have to think about this in a broader picture. What is What are we really doing? What can we do? And what can we control? Um, so, this is something that as we get into these stimulus bills and the loans, there's a couple major loan provisions that are out there that we can do. I just alluded to the payroll protection program. That's a big one. The other one that had come out right before the stimulus bill was the economic income disaster loan through the SBA, and both of these are SBA loans. Um, so those are the two big loan programs. Then there's a variety of tax provisions that are in the stimulus bill that will impact everybody in very unique and individual ways. And I'm not going to get into those today because we'll be looking at those as we look at each of your situations and how we can best use that. Those are not going to be magic bullets, though. They're just going to be able to help us around the edges. So the big thing is the current liquidity. What do we need to do? And that's going to be the payroll protection program or the economic income disaster program. And so I'm going to walk through those briefly. All of you have seen different things that out there on what's in these programs and all that. And there's a little bit of misinformation out there, but most of that information's been pretty good. I sent out this morning, and you should have received summaries of the two loan programs and some of the loan applications and some of the other paperwork that goes with it. So let's just walk through this briefly. The payroll protection program, this is an SBA loan, but it's going to be administered through banks that deal with SBA. And so most banks can do this if they choose to do it. And so I think most of them are going to just to maintain customer loyalty, but I'm not sure. There's going to be some that choose not to. The payroll protection plan is what everybody's been real interested in because it's the one that's tied to forgiven money. And so we'll get into that in a minute here, but basically it's designed to help businesses keep people employed. They're trying to keep people off unemployment, and that part's a good idea. That way it's a one-time thing. Help businesses get through the next 2 months, and then boom, businesses are on their own, and people have never gone on unemployment. And so this is where I see a really nice program for the right situation. It's calculated based on 2.5 times your average monthly salary. And then this loan can be spent for things like salaries, mortgages, rent, and utilities. And it's a 2-year term, and it's only a 0.5% interest rate. So even if we don't get into the forgiveness part, it is a very low interest rate that, again, is designed to get you through this. So that's the pluses. The other big thing is the forgiveness. And basically the forgiveness, I'm oversimplifying it here. We're not going to get into the details of it, but if you're keeping your payroll levels high, and that's basically 75% or above where they were, then this loan has a good chance of being forgiven. And so I really don't know how they're going to calculate this, because I don't know what's going to happen with profit and cash flow. And, is it just because of cash flow? And as long as your cash flow is deficit and you're spending this much on payroll, then you're going to be able to be forgiven. I don't have that yet. It may be starting to float out there, but this is one of those, there's all sorts of things about how it's forgiven, but I can see a lot of different ways of calculating this, and the devil's going to be in the details. So this is one of those where I think as long as the payroll levels are high enough, then you got a pretty good chance of being forgiven as long as you qualified for the loan. And if you're using those loan proceeds for your payroll, then the rest of the stuff like mortgage loans, rent, utilities, things like that is kind of irrelevant, because if you're using it for payroll, then you don't need it. You're using 2.5 months is what you applied for, and you're going to use it over the next 2.5 months. That's where we'll talk about the economic income disaster loan. That's where that can come into play and help with some of the other cash flow problems. One thing with this payroll protection loan is it's a pretty simple application. And again, I sent that out this morning. It's relatively simple, but the one thing the owners have to certify is that the funds are necessary to survive and will be used for the appropriate expenses. So, this is designed to prevent abuses. And, if you don't need the money but apply and get it, that may be a problem. I don't know. This is one of those, they're trying to make sure this is only used for businesses that need this money to get through the next 2 months, and then they will use it for payroll. So you do have to make those certifications, and that there's some legal issues if you really don't need the money but you're applying for it. But if you're in that borderline situation where you don't know how things are going to shake out, you might actually even segregate this money, put it in a separate bank account, and then pay those bills out of that bank account. I don't know how this is, like I said, how they're going to really evaluate this on the back end. But this loan is really perfect for businesses that need some support for the next 2 months, 2 to 3 months, something like that. It might be a restaurant that's running at half capacity because they're only doing carryout. It might be it could be a distributor that some of their suppliers are down and customers are not ordering like they used to. But again, as business picks back up, they should be fine. So they need something to help with their payroll and other expenses. There's a lot of different little scenarios where this is just designed to get you through that next 2 months. And then even if there's no loan forgiveness, and if it's very low interest rate for 2 years. So that, again, this gets you past this liquidity problem for the next couple months. Now, for some of you who've already, maybe you've laid off people and you really are in this boat, you do have time after you apply to fix your employee situation to maximize the forgiveness if applicable. But if you're just borrowing money and hiring people and they don't have anything to do, it's not really helping your situation. And this is why I'm saying before, we really have to think about what is your unique situation and what do you really need to get through this. If you need to lay people off and they go on unemployment, I'm not a fan of that, obviously, but if that's the right thing to do, borrowing and keeping them sitting at home, is that helping you any? But if you are one of those where the business is struggling, but you got stuff for people to do, but you can't really afford it, this is perfect. So that's where I see this payroll protection program fitting. Certain situations, it's really good. And like I said, the loan forgiveness is icing on the cake, because not only is it forgiven, but it's also not taxable. So if you do get this, it's going to be a good thing for you. The other major loan is this economic income disaster loan, and this is through the SBA. And this is designed to cover, it can cover payroll and, all sorts of different costs. A lot of businesses have some fixed costs that may not be specifically outlined in that payroll protection program. Maybe you have equipment leases and things like that. So this, if you were going to have some shortfalls, this might be a better program for you. This is direct with the SBA, and it's something that you can use this however you want to cover your shortfalls, because you taking a hit, because the economic income is, because your economy is in a free fall. The other benefit of this program is if you're in a situation where you have an immediate cash need, say that like all of a sudden everything dried up and your supplier or your customers aren't paying your bills and suppliers are demanding payment. And if you needed just a quick fix, this has a $10,000 loan advance that you can borrow, and it's pretty quick turnaround, I think. And that is actually forgivable. That's the only part of the economic income disaster loan that is forgivable, but it's $10,000. And so if you really need it, that's something that, go apply for it. And as I was walking through this, I'm basically, the payroll protection program opens up tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but I generally see applying for the payroll protection program, if it applies to you, first. And then if you're still short, then you go to the economic income disaster loan. Because if you apply for the economic one first, then that's going to slow down the payroll protection loan. And that's something that I think once it slows it down, it might hurt you as far as getting money that way. So if the payroll protection applies to you, do that one first, and let's see where that stands, and then you can go to the economic one. This is a more serious loan. It's got a very low interest rate. I think it's 4%, and it goes up to 30-year term. Now, most of you wouldn't need 30, but you may need, it can cover you for a while. And for some of you that have some serious damage to the business, and again, it's short-term damage, but now it's ready to, it's going to take a while maybe it's going to take you a year to build back up. Then this may be a good thing to look at. The other part of it is there could be some second waves. And not only second waves of the COVID-19, but the second waves of issues. So for instance, think about the businesses that make hand sanitizer. In the next 6 to 8 months, they're doing great. They're printing money. Even if they're not charging, even if they're not gouging, they're just doing well because they're going full tilt. But then all of a sudden, everybody has a 12-year supply of hand sanitizer, and then their business dries up overnight. And then it may take a while to repurpose their business to whatever's next. And so they could have some hits later. There's a lot of different impacts on businesses that are going to be, that's, like I said, the second wave. My business is doing fine, but if 20% of my businesses went out of business, then, my next couple of years could be bad. And is that because of me? No, it's because of the COVID-19. So this is one of those where I might, I'm not necessarily saying I would, but some businesses are going to need to borrow somewhere in the future. And this is where the economic income disaster loan may come into play. Applying for this is through the SBA. It's either you can do it in paper or you can do it online. This is a much more extensive application because basically the SBA is underwriting from scratch. The payroll protection program is designed for you to borrow through your local bank, or through whoever you bank with. And they already have your information. That's designed to be faster. Whereas if you're going with the SBA, it's going to take some time. They're trying to minimize the red tape, I think, but you're still dealing with the government. So it is going to be a slower process. So the bottom line is that, there are some loans that can help get you through it if you're having issues, and they're providing the liquidity. The big thing here is, you're responsible for what's coming up. You need to decide you're in control. And I know so many people are feeling that they're completely out of control, but you really can. You're in control of more things than you think. And you're in control of yourself, for one. and how you react to it is just really critical. So, there are a lot of options here, deferment of major loans, talking to, if you have equipment leases or mortgage loans, can they be deferred? And the answer is maybe. I know the banks are backing off a lot, and not because I'm not against banks or anything else, but they're just like, they know they need to give people some space. So as a side issue on the personal side, if anybody has student loans, it's one of the things in the stimulus bill is you can request deferment on those student loans to, I think it's September. And, but you have to request it. So it's a matter of taking charge. You can keep, managing your employees, looking at employee benefits during this time. I'm not looking to necessarily cut just to cut, but sometimes you have to do things. Sometimes there's some discretionary costs. I know at any one point in time, I have some software I'm not using. I need to cut it. Those are things, they may be small, but they add up. You can also use some of this time when you're slower, to do things that you might not otherwise do right now. What about doing your physical, if you have inventory, maybe you do your physical inventory now when you got people, and again, you got to obey the stay-at-home laws and be careful with all this. And I don't know how maybe we have to be really careful about this, but some of you might be able to do inventories, or clean the office or clean your space. Maybe you have virtual team meetings with your team to talk about, okay, what is our business going to look like on the back end of this? Again, get them involved, because as the leaders, optimism is critical. We have to be realistic about the situation, but we have to be optimistic about the future. And we have to figure out what is the right thing for us to get through this. Obviously we all need cash to operate, but once you get, these loans are designed to help you get past the cash part. And I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility with the economic income disaster loan than with the payback one, just because I think there's going to be such a run on the payback protection loan. But I think, there is cash there to operate. Now it's a matter of, okay, let's lay out our future. So what I want to do is give you some next steps. And this is, there's 8 of them. And this is just my first pass at this, and this will be evolving over time. But for those of you, step number 1, if you need cash immediately, then go ahead and apply for the economic income disaster loan. You can get the $10,000 advance, and that might be what you need to get through things or to get started. If you think the payroll protection program loan's appropriate, check with your banker today if you haven't already. There's a checklist of things that most banks want. Each one's going to be different because each bank is responsible for their own underwriting. But get on their list, get the application together, and then apply. Step 3 is apply tomorrow or as soon as you can with the bank. Now, the bank may even tell you they don't want to see the application tomorrow because they're not quite ready, and that's fine. But you're on their list. You're talking to your banker. Maybe it's Monday or Tuesday, whatever, but make sure you're there. If your bank does not do these loans, then you need to get with a bank that does. While you're waiting, number 4 is while you're waiting on the determination on the protection program, start putting your business model together for the future. Does there need to be a change? I don't know. Maybe you're doing everything right, and it's just a matter of you just need the short-term liquidity. That's fine, but do some critical analysis right now. Then develop your cash flow plan for the next 3 years, and take a look at where you're going to be and what is this And, for those of you who are still short, then it's like, okay, what do we need to do to change that? Do we have, we typically had 30 employees. Maybe we really need to figure out how we can survive with 20. I don't know. I'm just saying, these are the types of hard things that we have to look at right now. Then after you learn what you qualify for on the payroll protection program, then you might consider applying for the economic income disaster loan just to fill in gaps. So if we think, okay, we're not sure, but we think we're still going to be $300,000 short over the next 3 years, apply for the loan now, and let's get that started. Because again, it's a low interest rate loan, and so it gives you flexibility. Now is also a good time to look at all of your cash inflows and outflows. And this, like I said, banks are deferring some loan payments. Could be huge. It could be, subscriptions that you have. It could be, okay, do I have the right size office? Now, that takes a while to fix, but the point is, what do I really need? And, so that may be a 2-year fix, but now's the time to start making those plans. So we need to look at all of those. Same at the personal level. Where are we spending money? Is there ways to improve that? And there are a few tax things that were coming out with this new stimulus bill. One of which is there's something with retirement plans where you can basically have 3 years to pull money out of a retirement account and put it back in tax-free. And there's some opportunities there. So that, again, this might be another fix. And then for all businesses, including those doing well during this time and the ones that are struggling, what we really should do is a SWOT analysis, which is, evaluation of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. And we need to really think about things from we have a new reality. Some of you may have done those in the past, but it's like, okay, that's thrown out the window. Now we need to say, what do we really need to do going forward? Because, there's just a lot of ways that, the music can stop and we don't have a chair to sit in, and that's what can happen here. So I'm going to take a real quick look at any questions, and then we'll close up here. If you got any other questions right now, just please email them to me and we'll see if we can address them. Let me see here. Okay. Most of this, one of them is, about managing your balance sheet during this time period. And this is something that too often small business owners don't do it. And everything is all focused on your income statement. And this is the time, this whole process with the COVID-19 and, hitting in our businesses, now we're starting to see the impact of managing the balance sheet. And what we really want to be doing is obviously conserving cash, and looking at how much. We don't care if we're using our assets quite as wisely because we need cash. We don't care if we have a return on investment. Right now, it's about how are we accumulating cash, or is there cash outflow? And then it's a matter of going forward with our business, to once we get past this critical time period, then it's a matter of how do we make sure our businesses are profitable, that are going to, and then consistently generate cash. So it's a little different focus right now is on cash and your balance sheet, and making sure if you have inventory, having those things, at appropriate levels. This may actually be a time where you increase your inventory, which sounds incredibly stupid, but it gives you capacity to sell. And people right now are cutting so much that if you sell something with inventory, people can't find it. So we have to look at our businesses a little different. And the focus right now is on what our assets are, what our liabilities are, and controlling those. Let's see. Any other questions right now on this? I'm giving you one last shot here. I know I went through things quickly, and I know all of you are going to have some questions as you're looking at your loan applications and so forth. I would suggest making a pass through. If you have something for me, I obviously can't do everybody's loan application or anything like that, but I can answer specific questions, or I can take a quick look at a personal financial statement if you've put it together and see if I see anything that's way out of whack. So those are the things to I can help you with. Let's see. Somebody asked, isn't it hard to rebuild your balance sheet, so you would recommend to borrow depending on your business? I think what is getting at is your balance sheet, even though if you borrow on this, you're not making your balance sheet look as good, but what you're doing is making sure you have liquidity. And then over the next 6 to 10 months, we're going to start managing that. And if we can get our businesses back to normal, then we can start managing our balance sheet. And then maybe we pay back some of the loans a little. If everything turns out well, we pay back the loans a little quicker than we otherwise would. Or we're using that money for other things. But the point is, we have to know where we want to go with it. And that's where it's just an increased focus. Let's see, another question. If cash flow isn't an issue, is there anything else in the stimulus that we should be aware of or try to take advantage of? Currently, if you're having good cash flow and you don't see that you're going to get hit with any real issues over the next 6 to 8 months, and your basic business model is fine, then there are some issues with some taxes, some tax credits for certain situations, for payroll tax credits in certain industries that were shut down. There are some other deferrals that could happen that will, again, help a little bit with cash. But again, if your cash flow isn't a real issue, the stimulus is really designed to help those that were struggling. But there are a few tax things, and we'll be coming out with more of that. I haven't focused on those as much just because the loan program has been the biggest issue. But I will have more information on some of that as it's coming out. But yeah, there are a few things in taxes that will impact us going forward. As a side issue, the taxes are going to have to go up. So tax planning is going to get a little tricky because this year rates are pretty low, and next year rates probably will stay low. But after that, they're probably going to go up. So that may mean we do some things to accelerate income even. Which is kind of crazy. So we do have to just look real hard at where you're at, and that just proves the importance of proper tax planning. Anything else that anybody has? Okay. Well, I want to close, with a quote by C.S. Lewis, and this is just a sort of an inspirational quote, but I think it's really good. He said, hardships often prepare ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. And, this is one of those. Right now we're going through stuff, and this is can be really hard. And even if you aren't hit personally, um, just the personal toll, because eventually we're going to know, every one of us is going to know somebody that is hit by this. And so I think what we want to do, there's is really set our businesses up for great things going forward. And we need to learn from this. Our country needs to learn from it. Obviously, there's some major lessons for the country. And, some of the politicians had really thought about some things that, they could have done better with the stimulus bill. But I think we have great possibilities. So I just want to encourage you to, keep moving forward and be optimistic about the future, because I am. And if you need something, please let me know. I would appreciate for anybody on this call, shoot me an email or a text with any comments on the call, good, bad, or ugly. If this is worthwhile, these types of calls, with the right topics, I plan on doing a few more in the future just to help us navigate, because there's going to be some unexpected turns, and I don't know where they are over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And so I'm planning on doing some more of these just to help everybody stay focused on what they need to be doing. And if you have any suggestions for topics on those, I'll definitely consider those. So please shoot me an email and just let me know. Thank you again for participating. I do plan on having this recording available. I don't know how yet. I'll figure it out. I haven't done one of these before with the recording and making it available. So that's still to be determined. But if anybody knows somebody else that would like to listen to it, I should have it here pretty shortly. Thank you again. Have a great day.